A couple of weeks ago, I told you DeepSeek V4 was coming, and then I never came back to it. Well, it landed, and it did something I did not expect. Their small, cheap model just beat their own flagship, and they did it without making it bigger. Same size, same architecture, not one parameter added. July 31st. DeepSeek opens the public beta of V4 Flash. The build is called 0731. 14 cents per million tokens in, 28 cents out. That is the entire price. 284 billion total parameters. 13 billion active per token. A 1 million token context window. And an MIT license, so you can host it yourself. Now, DeepSeek also has a bigger model. V4 Pro. The flagship. The one that's supposed to be better. On all 9 agent and coding benchmarks DeepSeek published, the cheap one now scores higher than the flagship. All 9. Terminal Bench 2.1. The Pro Preview scores 72.1. Flash scores 82.7. But the number that made me sit up is this one. On DeepSWE, the previous Flash Preview scored 7.3. The new build scores 54.4. That is not an improvement. That is roughly 7.5 times. So naturally, I assumed they'd scaled it up. Bigger model, more compute, new architecture, the usual. That is not what happened. The model is exactly the same size it was before. Same 284 billion parameters. Same 13 billion active. Same architecture. They changed none of it. What they changed was post-training. That's the stage after the model has already learned everything it's going to learn. Think of it like this. Pre-training is what the model knows. Post-training is how it decides to use what it knows. So DeepSeek didn't teach it more. They taught it better. Same knowledge, different habits, and the agent scores went through the roof. And that is the part I think actually matters, way beyond one model release. Because the entire industry story right now is that progress needs more. More chips, more gigawatts, more billions. This is a counterexample sitting right there. A lab that cannot buy the best chips took a model it already had and made it beat its own flagship. With training technique. That's the second time in 3 weeks a Chinese lab has made the price of good enough collapse. Kimi did it with scale. DeepSeek just did it with method. Now the honesty section, because you deserve it and most videos today will skip it. These are DeepSeek's own published numbers, on DeepSeek's own models. The benchmarks are real and third-party. The scores are self-reported. 2. It's a public beta, not general availability. Betas change and betas break. 3. This is an agentic encoding result. Nobody has shown it beats the American frontier models across the board, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But even with all 3 caveats, the fact stands. A cheaper model beat its own flagship on 9 benchmarks, and it happened because somebody changed the teaching, not the hardware. So, what do you actually do with this? 3 moves. Move 1. If you run any agent workload, price it against 14 cents. Agent loops burn tokens like nothing else. Long chains, retries, tool calls. That's precisely where a cheap, strong model changes your monthly bill the most. Move 2. It's MIT licensed and the weights are on Hugging Face. If your blocker was ever data leaving your building, that blocker is gone. Move 3. And this is the one I'd actually write down. Stop assuming the biggest model is the right model. The default habit is to reach for the flagship and pay flagship prices. This release is a direct argument that the habit is now expensive and often wrong. Run your own evaluation. Your workload is not a benchmark, and the only score that matters is the one on your tasks. And watch what happens next. If post-training technique is worth this much, every lab sitting on a model they already trained just found a cheaper way to compete. That's the story. 14 cents beats its own flagship, and the gain came from teaching rather than hardware. Go price your agent stack against it tonight and tell me in the comments what your number was. I'm Dex. Subscribe.